Hello, my name is Miguel Almario, and welcome to Speak. This is a show about empowering people on their mental health journey, and if you want to support us, please consider following our club's social media at the IM Collectives. This episode is about men's mental health and finding community. I hope you enjoy the show today. So, I hope you are having an awesome week. We are doing a lot of really fun things with the show so far, so it's very exciting for me as the host. I'm very proud to say that we have sort of made something out of ourselves. So, thank you to the audience for being a part of the whole thing. And without further ado, I've had the very exciting privilege today to be interviewing a friend of mine that prior to scripting, I hadn't had proper contact with in like probably close to 5 years, right,
Yeah, pretty
Stephen?
much.
I
Yeah,
would say
yeah.
5 years. So, um, without further ado, this is my friend Stephen. I'll let him kind of speak on his own behalf.
Oh, sure. Okay. Yeah, that's my name. I'm Steven. I've known Miguel. I met Miguel in band class in high school, and that's how we
Hell
met.
yeah, baby.
Yes, sir. And it's just been downhill from there, I guess.
Okay, it's not that bleak, but me and Steven were top tier tromboners for a very long period of time. So,
For sure. We
uh,
didn't do anything. I just showed him memes all the time.
oh yeah, big meme guys. You know, it's great uh being older, being able to reconnect with Steven and then, still being able to talk about the same stuff and act the same way. I think
Yeah. Nothing's
it's
really changed, really. It's just more like times past, I guess.
times past. I'm a big mental health guy now, kind of cool. So,
Very nice.
um,
Happy for you.
thank you. I sincerely appreciate that. And, I'm happy, one, that you were able to kind of do this. I know, um, first and foremost, it's kind of weird to be super on board with doing a mental health style show, even though our show at this point isn't, it's mental health related. It's not necessarily like the driving force behind every episode, but
Mhm.
doing a show of this nature is still kind of, it takes some courage. It also takes some courage to speak publicly. So thank you, Stephen, for wanting to do this and being a part of this whole shebang. And Stephen and I today have something very particularly valuable to talk about, and we think that it's something that not only would be beneficial to men going through issues with their mental health and whatnot, but also beneficial to people at large. We live in a kind of a weird time. Mental health becomes an issue for a lot of people, so it's important in facing that you have a community and you have a very rigid support system. But how do you kind of find that? That's what our discussion is going to be about today. So we're going to be talking about finding community, the valuable uh, insights and lessons you kind of learn from making connections and using interests to kind of be the main driver of that, and how you would meet people that previously you would have no chance of doing so if you didn't take a chance in the first place. So to kind of get us started, I mean, like, what are your interests, Steven, just in
Sure.
general?
Well, actually, before that, I just wanted to say that, like, I feel like if people knew both of us pretty well, I feel like you wouldn't think we'd be in the same circle. But I think the fact that we were in band kind of helps that, as well, right? So I would
Hmm.
that we had that band interest, but I guess the main things I think I like right now, I think are just kind of, I'm a big comic book guy. And like video games, I guess a lot of people do, but I want to kind of focus on comic books just mainly because I don't know, it's a niche community for sure.
Hmm.
You don't, it's not like everybody, for all the Marvel movies that make billions of dollars every year, like probably like 5% of people of who buy those tickets don't actually read comics, right? So
Hmm. It's it's kind of interesting. The comic book to be on the same train. Like, I'm also a pretty, not as big as Steven, but I'm a decently big comic book person. It's something that
mhm.
my dad was into. I got into through him, and it's something that we kind of talked about previously, and also when we scripted the episode. Uh, but yeah, it is a niche community, and it's these niche communities that you make like connections that end up being the people that you look to spend time with. And I think
Mhm.
that just going back to how we were introduced is primarily through band. but I don't talk to everyone from band. Like it's
Right?
there's a specific there's things that keep people together, and whether it's interest, whether it's just being able to connect to someone outside of that. But the idea of community is something that's really important, and I think that um it starts with interest, but hopefully, and the end all be all goal is that you bridge that gap with interest and then make those connections afterwards that last you, beyond a fascination for maybe comics or what have you. But personally, I have this like super secret fascination for Yu-Gi-Oh. I think I've had that for a very long time, and it's one of those things that I haven't been like, not that I'm closeted Yu-Gi-Oh enthusiast or anything, but like it's not something I've
Well,
particularly
you're
like.
out of the closet now, I guess.
Yeah, no, I'm well out of it. I am now here to talk to you about my addiction to Yu-Gi-Oh cards, but it's something that I haven't had a chance to speak about publicly, and B, I think that I've kind of robbed myself of finding people with similar interests in this regard, and it is one of those like niche nerdy things that I have particularly fallen in love with, and I wish it was easier to kind of find these groups and find these people that I would be able to have a long standing relationship with, but like whatever barriers that exist kind of prevent me from doing that, specifically with like interest groups, I think,
Yeah, our
because
circles, right?
it's difficult. It's really difficult, especially with like comics and of the sort that have super niche but large fandoms. And sometimes we were talking about this earlier with the concept of gatekeeping. Sometimes it's kind of intimidating to approach these groups when you feel like you have to satisfy a certain like knowledge requirement to pass through the test of dedicated fans or whatever you have.
Yeah.
Um, so like my first question, I guess, to kind of get us started, besides the interest one, is Steven, like when like specific to the comic book community, I guess, like how did you kind of get into it, and what kind of things, barriers, I guess, that you had to navigate around to, find home there, if I'm
Yeah, for
being
sure.
dramatic. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think because I think a lot of the people our age in the the Gen Z era, or like us who are like early 20-year olds or whatever, we all watched like the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie, so that's how you kind of get into it. And then me and my dad would go to the chapters every weekend, and they had the comic book spin rack, and we'd listen, and then we'd just go and read books all the time. And then, but I didn't really get into it until I started becoming starting money when I was like 14, 15, being in cadets, because that's the whole thing. It's really freaking expensive to buy comic books. They're like right now with the tax and everything, it's like what like $5 an issue, and they're supposed to be like $4 US, right? And then if you're buying 10 of those every month, it gets pretty expensive. But since I finally had disposable income back in high school with cadets, I was able to what's it called? Actively spend more and buy more. And then that's how you kind of get into the passion too. And just like uh and then it's like, if you're interested in talking to people, like it's always you can spend hours in a comic book shop just talking to the people up the front. That's all I would do sometimes is I spend the first 5 minutes buying everything I need to get that week. And then the rest of the 10 hours, it's just me and the guy at the front of the comic book shop, just like uh, shitting on like Batman for like an hour and a half or something.
Mm. I think like I've had I went and just spent like $130 on Yu-Gi-Oh cards like legitimately 2 days ago. I didn't tell you this, but I did do that.
You want to
Uh,
save it for the actual recording.
okay, I wouldn't say that. It's just I didn't realize it would be a topic of conversation right now. But like
No, yeah, the perks, right?
I did go and buy a bunch of Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and I came in thinking that maybe I would have to explain myself to someone in there, and that would be it. And it was a weird, like, kind of anxious moment where I'm like, oh shit, do I have to like prove my worth in this store? But I came in,
Where'd
and
you go? Was it like a sentry box or what?
okay, no, there's this place in Hidden Valley called Andy's Sports Memorabilia, but like he
Oh,
sells
okay.
cards in general. So
Yeah.
a bunch of Yu-Gi-Oh cards, a bunch of Magic the Gathering. Very lovely place, by the way. Shout out to Andy's store. Very good
Shout out to
guy.
Andy.
Yeah, big
I don't
guy.
even know the guy.
Yeah, he's a good guy, let me tell you. But I came in and it was this weird anxious moment where I'm like, okay, I have to maybe explain myself, but it was the guy at the counter, Andy, who owned the place, and then another dude that was also looking at Yu-Gi-Oh cards. But the thing with Yu-Gi-Oh cards is you can sometimes, like, when you get really into it, you buy singles, like a specific card you're looking for, you pay whatever. Like, it sometimes gets expensive. You could spend like upwards of $20 on one card, one piece of fucking cardboard. But um, the whole idea is that, once you get really into it, you look for these specific pieces that you would build into a deck, and then you could go compete with other people. That's like the
Yeah.
premise. So this dude was just looking through singles, and I came in, kind of stood like at the back and started looking at the Yu-Gi-Oh type stuff. And eventually they asked, like, "Oh, what's up? What are you looking for?" And then, gave them the spiel that I had mentally prepared. Like, "Oh yeah, I'm getting back into Yu-Gi-Oh. I kind of," and it's weird because I'm not like, I like, it's like Steven kind of mentioned earlier, like stature wise, I don't exactly come off as a, self-conscious individual. But I felt very isolated in that moment where I'm like, first of all, the dude at the card shop who owns the place, who knows everything about this, I have to talk to. And then this guy who looks like a pretty studious man, trying to build out his best deck, is now hearing my kind of plea to be a part of this community in a way. And it was really anxiety inducing. I'm like, oh, I don't know how I'm supposed to act around in this circumstance. But um, eventually you get over the hump. I think initially it is that anxiety of being rejected in a way, but I got over the hump, and then these guys were super nice about it. They're just, yeah, no, this is great. Love getting people join. And this is what I'm doing with the shop. Apparently, they have like a draw of if you spend over $100. So I got entered in the draw. But then you get that, and then there's like a tournament they're doing, and people come in and play games every so often. So like, I wouldn't have access to that knowledge, that information, if I didn't like put myself out there in the first place.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's kind of, so I get, okay, next question here is, we talked a bit about the feeling of once you enter this group, it's a good group, but like, um how have you, we can make it about comic books again, we could talk about whatever, but
Yeah.
accessing these groups in the first place, how do you kind of recommend, if you okay, let's make it like, if you were never into comics beforehand, maybe you're just, Tobey Maguire person, or maybe
Tom
um
Holland or
you're
something.
just super into Tony Stark's Iron Man, you're like, I really want to read like Superior Iron Man or something, because
Mhm.
whatever, how would you kind of recommend, one, people getting over that anxiety barrier, into like, going into something you might not necessarily know a lot about?
For sure. I think because it's weird that you mentioned that, is because you would think if you're just buying a comic book or Yu-Gi-Oh card, where it's you're just buying that like single material piece, but that's the whole thing. Is there's all culture behind it. I just wanted to go back to how you're talking about sort of barriers and stuff too as well. Where just like um I don't know, because like if you don't know anything about it, you learn it slowly once you get into it, but you wouldn't know, right? Um, what for if I'm talking for comic books, I guess I think since I was always sort of into them and I had the interest in them all my life, I guess it was just more so like I don't know. Well, there's a lot of good resources online for sure, and that definitely helps. There's a lot of fan websites for obscure characters and stuff. I think for me personally, what helped a lot with me, I just picked up books that I knew already that I liked. I like Spider-Man, so I pick up Ultimate Spider-Man every week, and that's the book with Miles Morales from Into the Spider-Verse. So I'd go like that. But then the whole thing, it's like, who do you talk to these people about these things? How do you indulge in that sort of passion for these characters or for the medium, right, of comic books? And then so obviously you can talk to people at a comic book store and you can do that. But then what is nice is I found a page called Comic Book Pages Without Context on Facebook. And they would just, that's what it is. They post really funny comic book pages without context. It got really big, like 100,000 people liked it. And I think it might have shut down, but like you had comic book creators actually like noticing this group and like noticing this Facebook page and stuff. And then that they had a subgroup. It was called shit posting about comics. So it was a sort of a meme group, sort of an actual comic book discussion place. And to be fair, that place is a bit of a wild wasteland, but um, you can meet some very awesome and interesting people there. And that was the whole thing. When you're talking about anxiety, when I get into there, when I'm talking to my friends on that group, it's really funny because they've read billions more comic books than I have, and then I get sometimes self conscious about that. But they're like, no, "Don't worry about it, man. We're just enjoying ourselves until somebody gets mad at our opinion about something." You know?
I feel like I think that as a new entrant into things, and whether it be like Yu-Gi-Oh cards or comic books, or even if you're just like getting into music, or I don't know if you're trying to study a certain field or something, and kind of breaking that barrier, getting into it. I think a lot of people feel like a super uh self-conscious about their knowledge base, I guess. But it's one of those things like, you know, this summer I got into skateboarding, which was also a pretty weird transition in terms of like
Can we eat
uh
in this podcast? Sorry.
oh, go ahead and eat.
Okay, I'm so hungry. Okay,
Okay.
nothing.
Oh, big banana. So um what I'll say is, getting into skateboarding was sort of a similar experience to the Yu-Gi-Oh bit, where like, at first I'm kind of intimidated by, all these dudes, especially being 21 and trying to get into skateboarding. Like,
Mhm.
there are kids who are like 12 who've been doing this for at least 4 years at this point, who can
Mhm.
do everything I'm doing and not complain when they fall over. And I'm like, shit, well, this is difficult for me. And I think like it's that weird sensation of being like super uncomfortable that people kind of shy away from. But like in the first place, if you and it's weird when you're in it and you kind of like have sort of matured around this community or whatnot, and you forget that like at one point you did start at zero. And I feel like it's cliche to say, yeah, that like everyone starts from somewhere, but like really it comes from things that are difficult, and things that are maybe not niche, like maybe riding a bike or skiing or something that people actively like like challenge this every time. But like
Human
even
activities.
yeah, but when you go in like with interest groups and niche groups where like people seek that asylum, people seek that connection of over things that they like genuinely have passion about.
Mhm.
You feel that a lot with these niche communities, but then people forget that adage of like you do start from zero, and you kind of have to you know be about it, and you learn more year by year, day by day.
Yeah,
And
that's a whole thing. You're building up your confidence, right?
mhm.
And it
and
also helps, right? If you have somebody teaching you to do stuff or whatever, right?
mhm.
Like
and
for
it's
me, I'm not like a gym rat at all. So then when I was at a gym and then some dudes helping me and stuff, it just felt so like like when you have like a community or like any sort of help for something like that, it feels very validating or very you know nice.
accessible, some would say. And like
Yeah, yeah,
I
it
feel
makes it accessible because you have
exactly.
somebody easing you in.
And I think we actually live in a very good time for that. I think previously, or I wouldn't, yeah, previously maybe in certain groups it's still inaccessible, but we live in a pretty positive time for that sort of validation. As mental health becomes more and more prevalent, as people start being nicer to each other. Like in general, these are kind of getting broken down. And whether it's like Yu-Gi-Oh comics, going to the gym, music, movies, poetry, like uh these are all areas that if you're kind of in it already, if you're one of these people that maybe you've been into training, you go to the gym since you were like, I don't know, 13 or something, and
I think
like
that's legal.
you have been there, and you know exactly like the learning curve and whatever, then like I would say it's kind of part of the territory to give these opportunities to people. And I think that it's things I've mentioned in other episodes about other topics, but as someone who maybe has that higher degree of confidence or comfortability or what have you, understanding maybe, that, when you have that point, when you reach that point, that, you know, you're free of judgment. So like give other people these chances. I think it's valuable. And I think we're getting closer to that point, but it's also onus onto you as the newcomer that like, take a chance, risk yourself a bit.
Yeah, I think it's like a two-way street sort of thing when it comes to that sort of idea, I guess.
Hmm. And I think it starts with the gatekeeping aspect. I think that because like honestly, in all honesty, there are people who, I mean, like I kind of get this way with movies a bit because on the side I do a lot of movie
Do you
reviewing.
watch a lot of movies?
I watch a lot of
I saw
movies.
like that. There's that YouTube review or whatever. Of you
Yeah.
bunch of movies. Oh, okay.
Over
Nice.
the quarantine I did 67 movie reviews. And
Oh.
well, like those are just on my story. They float around for a bit. Some people replied to them. And then recently I started posting some reviews on YouTube. But then, I've been watching movies and like being critical about movies since, I don't know, probably high school earlier on. But it's one of those things that, you know, do I really have the authority to speak my opinion about this? Do I really like it's you kind of get that weird imposter syndrome. And I think that um it's really true for all these niche communities is that like, at first you might feel like, oh, damn, I don't know if I'm like justified in speaking, but like the only person who's kind of putting that lens on it is you at the end of the day.
Yeah, this is like a mental barrier. I think for me personally, in terms of like my sort of my nerd, I guess you could say nerdy interests or whatever, it's never been so much of a uh problem for me, I guess, for being more open about it, I guess, because that's essentially for a while, I guess it's like I consider that almost part of my identity is the hobby itself, right? But then obviously, like, you can get the different sort of contrast, I guess, where it's like if your interest is your hobby, but then like it might you look weird to other people because you look like the outlier out of everybody else, right? So
Hmm.
I think, yeah, I don't know. That's just something I was thinking of, I guess.
It's a weird dynamic to strike. I think that, I consider music a big part of my identity. I consider movies a big part of my identity. And I definitely get that way where like, you know, in regular conversation, I almost hesitate to talk about movies with people because
As a does anybody say it's like I don't care about the filmography or the cinematography, Miguel, and then you're
yeah.
like, oh, okay, I don't want to.
It's also okay. This is something this is a situation I get to pretty often where, we'll talk about, I'll be in a group talking about either a movie that came out um, or about like movies in general. And maybe someone will say like, oh, I really love that, whatever it was. And then like, there's this weird, it's like almost like a nag that you're like, oh, I want to talk about that. I want to elaborate more on it. Or, you know, it's one of those things that it does come from being very involved with this community and being very involved with this like specific interest for a while, that like, okay, if it comes up in conversation, you want to talk about it, but at
Yeah.
the same time you don't want to be a dick because you know
I know
having
that.
it's like one of those things that
I've
like
done that before. Oh my god, so many
yeah,
times. I've done that with like if I'm on Facebook and somebody drew fan art or somebody, and it's somebody from like high school or whatever, they drew fan art, and then this is like when I had no social cues or just was a complete asshole, and then I commented as like, "What the fuck? That's not canon to the universe. Why'd you draw this shit?" And I didn't even know these people. I knew these people for association because I added them on Facebook. And I was like, God, Steven, you're such a dick.
yeah, I mean, but like honestly, I think that
I'm not saying you are. That's just something that
mm,
I got reminded of. Or I
what
remember I was watching Birds of Prey, like the new movie,
mm,
and then like I was watching it with my sister, her boyfriend, and my dad, and whatever, and everybody's like, "Oh, what you think of the movie, right?" And then everybody's like, "Oh, it's good," or whatever. And then I went into the whole spiel. It's like, like things could have been better. Like they didn't adapt this story, and she wasn't like this in this story, or something. Blah blah blah. And my
mm,
sister was just like, "I like the Doja Cat song."
yeah, well like it's difficult when things you appreciate get repurposed for the sake of mass appeal. And then
Yeah, well,
You
that's the
know,
thing. They're not made for us too, right?
mhm.
This is you
Well,
gotta realize you can. So it's
it
like it's nice if you have the balance when you have people who are like, oh, I get it, but then because then you can tell they have an actual real respect for what you've been reading, right?
mhm. It's a weird balance too, because a lot of people, it's like the Tobey Maguire thing. You might just get into comics from something that was meant for mass appeal, and maybe down the line you get into it. So it's one of those things where you have to balance, the entry level material with people who are, bred into the culture, as
Yeah,
to say the least. And I think that, you know I have those moments of, really pretentious energy, and I think we kind of talked about it too, where like, um you kind of feel that like kick of like, oh, I am confronted with an opportunity to speak about something I care about, so of course I want to do it. But then you alienate other people, and
yeah,
it's like, you you learn about it, I think, early on into your career of whatever it is you're doing, whether it like is like the gym, music, whatever. You kind of learn it right away that, you will get like this when you start learning more and more. But then I think that, as you kind of get more mature in your understanding or whatever, or you get more involved, then, you start to realize that, oh yeah, you can give people these opportunities. It's fine. And like, it's onus on, people who know a bit more, or seen, or could be those like, uh people who would give opportunities. It kind of comes down to you to shift the way that you introduce people to it. Or like, if you're the guy at the comic book store who's like, hey, what are you reading, then there's a certain error you have to kind of keep in mind when you're dealing with someone who maybe doesn't know as much as you do, or maybe just hasn't been in the culture for as long. And I think that, we're getting better at it, not just like only me and you, but like all these niche communities, even like online, like Twitch, like there are a bunch of other communities that exist, and they're slowly becoming a little bit more self-aware and a little bit more engaging. um and it's great because at the end of the day, you make some serious friends, and I think that's what everyone, goes into these things for, is finding that kind of refuge with, people who like the same things and can maybe like, gush over the same things that you like. And
yeah. Where you
uh
have the passion for it, like, oh, you get it,
mhm.
I
And
think
it's
yeah, I think like I realize now, like I think I was probably like 14 or 15 when I like wrote those stupid comments. I don't know if they remember. If they do, they can I say if, but like um I think it's just goes to how fuck it, I forgot my point. But yeah, what are you gonna say?
no, I mean, like, yeah, when it comes to,
Oh
the
my god.
friendship, the community aspect, I feel like, in specifically with comic books, because it's something I also really resonate with people when I find out, hey, you like some Ultimate Spider-Man? What you think about
Yeah.
Superior Spider-Man? Doc Ock was kind of crazy. Like, when you find those people that you can make connections with and kind of like, gush over that.
You say something and they get it.
Yeah. When you meet these people, like, me, it's Steven. I haven't talked to Steven 5 years, and you can kind of like pick up where you left off. You really find a second home with these people, and
Hmm.
uh, building these connections and making them primarily, like, it starts with the interest, and then you get the buy-in from the community. Then, while you're in the community, you kind of need to do your due diligence of making people feel accepted. And then it makes everyone just more engaged, and it gives people more chances to kind of love what you love, and it's
Yeah, I know.
great.
Like, I have friends who I just talk about Destiny with them. That's all I know about them. That's all I talk about them is just Destiny and all that stuff. Right? It shows how strong like the passion for an interest can be when you can just form relationships around them. Right? Like, I have coworkers or just people I know, or they've gotten like it happens where people get married over meeting over like MMOs and stuff. They just have such a good time talking to each other, hanging out all the time that it can end up like that, right? It can be pretty cool like that too. I think that's
Hmm.
very interesting with when it comes to interest as well. I think that's why it seems like a lot of times it doesn't have to be, but you see a lot of really successful relationships or friendships or whatever where a lot of the interests are similar, and because it gives you something to relate to, you guys can understand each other on a deeper level that way.
Hmm. And then like that even that comes back to, how finding community and being with finding people that you relate to becomes really beneficial to mental health. If that wasn't very obvious right away, obviously having connections and getting to know people that care about you and care about the same things that you care about, very beneficial for your mental health. And it's just as Steven said, like when you get those very beautiful moments of, people I met you through World of Warcraft and now we're getting married. Like that's kind of nuts and it happens a lot more often than you think. So it's crazy and it's crazy how many people can reconnect after like longer periods of time purely based on the things they like. And it's, it's a crazy sensation. It's crazy when it happens to me. I bet it's crazy when it happens to you, Steven. It's
Do you have
crazy
any
when
like examples or anything that you can remember
I mean,
about?
besides us, talking
Mhm.
again in general, I think
Oh
one
yeah.
one big one would be in a way you see it through sports, the way the higher you go up in sport, the more you meet people that are like-minded and whatnot. But
Hmm.
that comes with its own caveats. But
Yeah.
um I think primarily like another exec on our team, actually, his name is David. Me and David haven't known each other super long, but I consider him like probably one of my best friends purely because of how we speak about movies and how the connections we made about movies, the things we've done
Mhm.
because of a mutual interest in movies. And he works on this team. He works with the IM. He's our marketing guy, and we've kind of been able to promote each other's success in a way, and that started with movies. I
Yeah.
believe, yeah, 100% that started with movies. So
That's sweet. That's
yeah.
like with me. The only reason I was on this podcast is because you put the thing on Instagram like, hey, I have this like if anybody wants to talk about men's mental health, if you have anything to say about, just let me know. And then I was like, oh frick, and then like it's not like I thought it was weird to talk to you after 5 years or anything, but it was more like I was like, oh shit, Miguel's into this. This is awesome. And like men's mental health is really important for me. I think I think people are pretty good and responsible in managing it, but then like obviously, I don't know. It's always a stigma thing, but then that's why it's like I like how we have an opportunity or a platform to like talk about this stuff like on here,
Mhm.
right? And then that's how we reconnected is for that's how we connect is through band and then for memes and comic books. Where even though we only really started talking about comic books now,
Mhm.
but the mental health angle like that really meant a lot to me. So it's like, oh shoot, of course, let me go see, and yeah, that's how it goes from there.
Exactly. And I feel like when we did start talking again, like the first scripting session, it was about Steven's background being Juggernaut, and that like it's
Wait, they won't get here. I can
yeah.
change mid thing, right?
Yeah, you can change it mid thing. The audio listeners, you won't get this beautiful display, but this is Juggernaut from X-Men. I don't know. Is this uncanny?
I have no idea. It's just generic juggernaut. Well, I was trying to
Generic
do a thing.
Juggernaut art.
I was trying to do a thing in my online comic book club where I was changing backgrounds mid call and trying to see if people would notice. And then so I put the juggernaut and I was trying to do a thing where I'd be like, and then I like jump off the screen because he's running at me. It's
Just
like dumb.
behind you.
Nobody got it either. I kept trying to do it to get a reaction. Nobody was saying anything.
It's one of those many online L's you gotta take sometimes.
Yeah, I
But
guess, right? You get L's even from fucking nerds and shit.
see, and like,
Yeah.
kind of going back to the mental health aspect of things, I feel like for men specifically, because it's just so heavily stigmatized, and because, the vast majority of dudes have trouble talking about, anxiety, about the depression, whatever. I think that, these interest groups and these communities are a huge opportunity to even open up on that angle. And, you find people that you trust right away with things that are very personal to you that you've come to associate heavily with your identity. So like these are the people that would care if you speak about your mental health. So
For sure, yeah. Like I bet, there's people who like say if they didn't have a great like family or whatever they're living with or something great. I'm just assuming, but like these, that's just a testament to how strong these relationships can come from your passions.
mhm,
Like you can talk about these things, right? I know for
exactly.
me, just one thing is like how my family's been really supportive of me and my mental health throughout the years, I think. And then it's just like, uh, and then just kind of hearing like, oh wow, it's not like this for everybody. Not everybody, nobody. Like it's not a common thing to talk about this stuff, I guess. And um, I'm just, it's a good thing that there's these sort of things. But yeah,
Mhm.
that's just what I wanted to point out.
Yeah, no, I experienced something like relatively similar as well. Like my mom and my sister, pretty good for me in terms of talking about mental health. I talk about mental health very often with my friend groups, but you
Well,
know,
that's good. Yeah.
yeah, sometimes I do get that I hear about it where I'll have a conversation with someone who will react with, "I wish more people had these conversations," and I'm like, you don't have this often because this is how I just talk all the time. So
Yeah,
it's difficult, but like there really is an opportunity for people who, you know, want that conversation or want to open up that kind of conversation is to do it with your interest groups. It's a good testing ground to a experiment with being more open to that sort of thing and be, impacting people's lives that might
yeah,
not directly, be in your circle, but you find through the through the things you love. So
yeah. I kind of have an example for that one time. I remember I was having girl problems and none of my friends were responding to my texts. So I went to the conflict group chat. I was like, "Hey, does anybody have like any like advice for like this like girls or anything?" Um, like I only know my reference from Spider-Man comics, so I can't really know. And then there's a whole big beam in the Spider-Man fandom where if you know the characters, so Aunt May was dying, and the only way that Spider-Man could save Aunt May is if he made a deal with the
oh my,
devil
is this
to
is
ruin
this
his
about
relate to he made a deal with the devil to cancel his marriage with Mary Jane. So the marriage that they've had for 30 years, he canceled it just so he can save this old lady that was gonna die anyways.
what was the line called? One
That's
last one,
one more day.
one more
So
day.
it's
Yeah, that's what
yeah,
it
and
is.
then that's the whole meme is everybody's commenting on the thing. It's like, okay, first of all, Stephen, don't sell your soul to the devil. Don't sell your marriage or your relationships to the devil. I was like, fuck you guys.
Rule one, please don't, because that was also very poorly received.
Yeah.
That's like the black mark of Spider-Man's entire, or is it Bendis who wrote that?
No, it was okay. It was the J. Michael Straczynski run, but then
Mhm.
it was the guy who drew it is also the editor in chief, I think, of Marvel at the
Right.
time. So then his name is Joe Quesada. So then Joe Quesada was like, okay, I don't think we can get a lot of good stories out of Peter being married. It's not
Yeah.
nice that we got to ruin. We got to somehow
Make
get
him single again.
marriage. Yeah, so he's young and perpetually failing all the time. And so that's how they came up with it. And like his name, J. Michael Straczynski's name was on the credits, but he's like, I had nothing to do with that. They put my name on there. That he's the editor in chief. He put my name on there, but I didn't do shit with that. you know,
Hey, well, if you learned anything from today, don't be Marvel's previous editor-in-chief,
do
J.
not
Michael.
sell your relationships to the devil, I guess, and you're good.
Yeah, that's thing
Yeah,
one.
very
But
cool. That's
you
that's
know,
the highlight for the Instagram page.
there you go.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of leads us to the end here. I mean, it has
Yeah, it
been
was kind of all around,
all over
but
the place. I love it.
there's some sort of thing you can get along with it.
There.
Hopefully,
That's what I want.
I'm hoping that it's at least enjoyable to listen to, because
That's
I don't know if I'm gonna listen to it after. Maybe I'll send it to my friends. But I'm hoping the get some sort of enjoyment out of it.
that's all the hope. Um,
Yeah,
so last couple things, if you're gonna take anything away, uh, I hope that through the course of this conversation, please remember to be more open, whether you're either taking a deep dive into something you are unfamiliar with for the first time, be more open to that kind of
Hmm.
uncomfortability. Whether you're, a long-standing patron of whatever it is you love, be more open to receiving new people. We can all benefit from empathy, the generosity, and basic kindness we offer to each other. Again, very cliche, but let's aim to keep these give these opportunities to each other. And we're all a little bit nervous about how much we know about one thing, whether it's Yu-Gi-Oh or comics or music, whatever. But
Hmm.
we can stand to benefit a lot of people when we challenge ourselves to be nicer, challenge ourselves to be kind. So um,
Yeah,
with
for
that,
sure. I
that
think
is
people just gotta open up more. I guess, or not open up more, but I mean, just one thing is like, just take more leaps of faith, I guess, because I think you'd be surprised where you end up. I guess. And I think
exactly.
you probably would have more fun than you think. So try it out.
Exactly.
It's not too. It's worth it.
Any okay, so is that any last things you want to say, Steven?
No, that was pretty much it. You know.
Okay. Thank you so much for being on the show. It's a pleasure to a
No worries. Thank
a
you for inviting
reconnect.
me.
Of course.
No, what I was wondering is, did anybody else respond to that?
Uh okay,
Or
so
no, it's not that. It's just more like I was scared. Like I was like, oh my god, he's gonna have like so many people on this thing or whatever. It's just us. Like, oh thank god.
oh no, yeah. Well, like we've had over other episodes so far. So there
Yeah.
there are other things around the realm of men's mental health that either at this point that this episode exists have come out before or after. So
Yeah,
it was a whole thing. I'm very glad to have a lot of people on it, and I'm also very glad that I had the chance to reconnect with you, Stephen. I'm
for
very
sure.
glad
Yeah,
that
it's
you
awesome.
know you wanted to be on the show and you now are on the show. So things to take forward, things I can kind of hang my hat on proudly and say I've continued this friendship and
Yeah, for sure.
happy about it. So without further ado, thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Take care.
See you guys.